there's something very quietly radical about the intensity and the difficulty of this piece, and it just holds your feet to the fire for so long.
Yeah, and it demands something of you when you watch it, because you have to really listen, focus. And I agree. I think we've found, and the actors have found, something really, yeah, quietly radical and quite moving about people in a space with no kind of technical gimmickry or wizardry. They're not mic'd. They're like, it's you and them in the text, and that's very, very hard. But I think ultimately feels really like refreshing and feel very connected.
It's very live.
It's really very live. Yeah.
I think that's partly what we wanted to do, or we always do, really. But it's not. You don't like write it down. It just happens with us. I think all three of the pieces that we've done here have been about the sort of ritual of being here. It's not really a kind of portal into a different land. It's like there's a sort of openness and a simplicity that, especially with a piece like this, is really much needed, because I think this, especially for the design, in a way, it is almost always because it's a very heavy prescription at the beginning of unsurprisingly, he writes a massive long set like staging thing,
which Tennessee Williams does as well. So it's
both of them went. Well, no, actually, with this,
so we read them a lot, and then one.
Yeah, there was almost a point where we were kind of interested in hearing actually the setting at the beginning of the show. It's such a beautifully written.
There was a point where we thought maybe the actor would say that, or like,
they'd arrive in the space and you'd hear it all, so that it's sort of just we didn't really need it. And then I suppose it is very specific to the time, to the period, to the location. Neither of us really ever have an urge to kind of wrench these pieces to now, because they just do that if you do them well. That if you kind of if you just hold the actors up and allow the play to happen with not too much adornment, it just feels bracingly modern and like terrifyingly so in this show's case. What we try and do in a way is you just feed all the feeling of the piece through a kind of like food processor, and out comes the visual language of it, which is this sort of clatter and brittleness and difficulty. And so it sort of is this really is not so much a literal space as an atmospheric peripheral vision sort of texture.
So could the two of you maybe talk about how a director and designer collaborates? Because of course you've worked several times before, so now do you have like a set formula for like the way you go about figuring out how the world should look, or is it like different for each show?
Good question. No idea.
I've never really had a formula, or never thought about having a formula. You just sort of just go and do it, and then I guess it's sort of it's slightly different, maybe depending on the interpersonal relationships between the director and designer. I guess when you have a shared sensibility and you understand each other, and then you've done a few shows together, you start to sort of
have a bit more of a shorthand
without speaking about it, but it just you develop a shorthand about it. Sometimes it does need speaking about, and I think more and more when I think back to early in my career, I wish I had been clearer, I think, or I had asked the director to be clearer with me. How would you like this to go? What do you need from me? Let's share our schedule and work, let's be really clear about when we're going to find the pockets for working. A lot of that stuff weirdly goes uncovered, and then you can sometimes fall into problems, or you go, oh, actually, shit, I'm away that week, and I meant to be, and then it can become quite dark and a bit sort of, but with us, somehow it just is now, by this point, it's quite effortless and sort of natural. With us, I suppose, I know now that Rebecca is not going to need much more than an empty stage, so we always will just start there. I will always just start there. I won't show her that. There'll be more than that. But I know that that for both of us, we have a sort of shared sensibility for doing as much as is necessary and no more, whilst sort of expanding the piece, I suppose, atmospherically, emotionally, in a kind of ritualistic way.
There's no shame, but if someone can't turn that off, don't worry. Oh, it's lovely. We enjoyed that.
It's really nice.
It's quite something, actually.
We talk music, even if there isn't music. We would sort of go, I'd be listening to this. And I think what you'll see with this show, it's kind of indicative of a lot of our work, is that it's very much about how light can change the space. So it's very rare that I will create a design without having either just a sense of the basic lighting, or that lighting will be a kind of engine in the telling of the story. Lighting and sound and music. So all of that kind of sits in the middle of us. I sort of grew up in the church choir, I suppose, for most of my childhood, and we sort of have musical backgrounds, and so there is something sort of, there's a commonality that we don't really talk about, but we don't need to, that is just a sort of the way that the work is sort of presented. In this case, that we had maybe just 3 or 4 meetings, some phone calls about the piece, some observations we made about it, and then Rebecca would come and look at the design evolve over maybe 3 meetings. It was actually pretty erudite for one of our shows. It just kind of felt quite instinctive. And I guess the key one of those will be when we sort of look at the design that we've done a few iterations of and start to just very roughly, don't go too details, but just sort of map out the movements of the piece, where the journeys could be, where, certain locations might need to be, or sort of emotionally where they are, what represents X, Y, and Z.
And I think we often start with any problems that are inherent within the piece, or things that you need to be able to solve in some way, or that feel central, and often that can then lead to what ends up being our sort of concept. So the pianos at Summer Smoke came out of us going, how are we going to do this big stone angel fountain? Going neither of us want to do that, but the play requires it. So how can we achieve what that is doing in the play without doing it? And then you end up going, what does that represent? How else can you express that? What if that was this? What if it was, And so often that also has led to us discovering things about.
Yeah, because this statue said eternity at the bottom, right?
Yeah, the statue.
And then, so what we did is the music at the end of Summer and Smoke, he closed the book and it said eternity, and the piece of music that was played from the whole thing was eternity, and there was an angel on all the covers.
Yeah, there's stuff that kind of also comes out of problem solving.
With this, it really felt like it is about a woman who is this fixed point in this kind of very fixed place, with these just continual orbits day after day after day after day after day going by with her in the same place. And we've always wanted to do something with a kind of sundial, actually, to really kind of enhance that sense of, I don't know what the word is, being trapped, I suppose.
Yeah, we're sort of interested in orbits and passage of time, and also the conversation between how small someone can feel in the scale of the universe, but also how big you can feel when you feel connected to it, and those different things that are in play. So if you're seeing it tonight, you'll sort of see what we're talking about. But I think a lot of what we talk about, what we're interested in, is the atmosphere we're trying to create, and how you shift an atmosphere across an evening, and what the emotional journey of an audience should be as well.
Yeah, I'm never really very interested in location, actually.
Yeah, me neither. We're very interested in location all the time.
Yeah, just sort of, as I said, the peripheral vision of a thing needs to sort of just sit here and vibrate. It will not it needs to sort of emotionally kind of match the feeling. And it helps the actors as well. I think it really does. This sort of visual clatter, and they kind of you can feel that going into their bodies. See, Rebecca's work is just so fantastic with bodies, and so I know to provide a space that can allow lots of interesting stage pictures and different relationships, especially in this piece, power dynamics. So from the lowest low to the highest high, you'll see a lot of that play out.
And actually with this play, like talking about how complicated and challenging the process was, actually it started to click as soon as we came in here. Since we got into tech and they got on the space and they felt what it was and they understood it, suddenly it all they started to be able to connect things, and the text sort of was able to drop into them in a different way. And so much of your learning about piece as a performer, I think, is about the space in which you're doing it as well. So this one was the most true I've ever had of that.